Mrs. Ford, call the roll, please.
Mr. Dean? Mr. Sharp? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Faulkner? Mr. Tanner? Mr. Groby? Mr. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Canulet? Mr. Belisario? Miss O'Brien? Mr. Stefanczyk? Mr. Bender? Mr. Artigue? Mr. Smith?
We have a quorum. Thank you. All right, election of officers, resolution, council series number Parish Council for calendar year 2013. Do we have a nomination?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to place in nomination the name of Mr. Jerry Bender.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion to close. All right, vote with your lights.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Jerry, come take the throne.
I'll sit here while you're in the chairman's seat. If I could just say, I want to say to expand on my prayer comments to our council colleagues, to the administration, to the people in the audience here and on TV. Marty Gould has been our chairman for the last 2 years. He was vice chairman for 3 years before that when I was chairman for 3 years. And I will tell you, we worked very well together. And it's absolutely no surprise to me tonight that I could speak for, well, y'all know how long I can speak for. I could go on forever about how good of a job Marty has done these last 2 years. To end up the last year of an administration and a council, and then take on the first year of a new council, or probably 2 of the toughest years that a council chairman can have. Marty has been open to everyone on the council. He's been open to advice. He's been willing to change his mind. He's been willing to stand his ground when he thought it was the best thing for the council and the people of this parish. And I can't say enough good things except to tell you that we have had an outstanding council chairman for the last 2 years. And personally, my friendship with him, which was already strong, is now even stronger because I respect him. In our 9 years together, I respect him immensely. And Marty, I want to thank you so much for the job that you did.
Thank you, Jerry.
Mr. Chairman, before you leave that seat, I would also like to thank you for your leadership this year. My first year, we had our bumps along the way, but I think we've danced our dance, and I think we're a good crew because of it, and I appreciate your leadership.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for working with us. It's going to be fun.
And we have this, well, hey, listen, you gave it to me last time, buddy. It's my privilege this time. It says over here, Marty Gould, St. Tammany Parish Council Chairman, 2011, 2012, and well-deserved, my friend. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Thank you. By the way, Marty won't be leaving. He will be heavily involved in the workings of the council, as all other council members will be. So you'll be in some new helpful roles, Marty. Okay. Our second item on the agenda is item 2, resolution CS number C-3629, resolution to appoint a vice chairman of the parish council for the calendar year 2013.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
I'd like to put Mr. Reed Falconer's name in as a nomination for the vice chairman.
Mr. Belisario nominates Mr. Falconer, and Mr. Tanner seconds Mr. Falconer. Any other nominations? Mr. Canulette makes a motion to close nominations, seconded by Mr. Artigue. Please vote on Mr. Falconer's nomination.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Mr. Falconer.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank my colleagues on the council. It's an honor and a privilege to be of service not only to the people of my district and to St. Tammany Parish, but also to my colleagues up here. I would be way remiss if I didn't also acknowledge that my best friend and wife is in the audience out there. She was here for this, and I appreciate it. Celeste, thank you.
And Mr. Falconer, congratulations. I look forward to you and I working together as a team. Okay, moving to the consent calendar. Item 1 is, excuse me. Let me give everyone the items that we know we have to pull. Under ordinances for introduction, we are pulling number 1, number 4. Under resolutions, number 8, number 9, also number 12, 13, and 14. Do any other council members, and I'll just ask in whole, does any other council members have any items that they wish to pull? Okay, need a motion to, on the consent calendar as amended. Motion by Mr. Dean, excuse me. Does any member of the public want to pull an item off the consent calendar for discussion? Excuse me? Okay, thank you. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Item 1 has been pulled, and this is ordinance count number 4927, ordinance to revoke a portion of Emerald Forest Boulevard right-of-way located in Ward 3. It is not District 2, it is District 5. That's a typo. And of course, this is ordinances for introduction. Mr. Gould.
Move to postpone until the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gould to postpone until the next council meeting, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
The next item that was pulled is item 4 on the ordinances for introduction, ordinance count number 4936, ordinance to amend the St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1 zoning, Section 5.1004B.3.A-4-A, single-family residential district relative to side yard setbacks. This was a proposal that was originally put up by Mr. Thompson, who is not here tonight. Mr. Gould.
Yeah, after doing some research and having some discussions with staff, I believe it would be appropriate to go ahead and introduce this tonight, but we got some work to do on it. There needs to be some tweaking to make sure that it does not create any harms for people in the future.
Okay.
All right, so I move to introduce.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gould to introduce, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Please vote.
You don't need
Oh,
to.
I don't, excuse me, don't need to vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, you're confused. You're Mr. Chairman now.
I'm rusty. All right, item 8 under resolutions, Resolution CS number C-3621, resolution to approve the appointment of Don Shea as Director of the Department of Economic Development for the remainder of the 2012-2015 Parish President's term of office. Ms. Brister.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am delighted to introduce Don Shea to you tonight. Don comes from, is in Jacksonville, Florida right now. He will be coming on board with your approval as our Economic Development Director. He has many years of experience. I have sent his resume to you all prior to tonight, and I would ask for your approval of the appointment. And then I would like to introduce Mr. Shea to answer any questions you might have.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by, that was Mr. Belisario. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Mr. Don, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself, let everybody get a fine look at you?
I would. Thank you very much, President Brister and Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I'm delighted for this opportunity. It's a great chance for my wife and I to return to her home and what I consider my home, the greater New Orleans area. I think you'll find me to be a collaborative and a kind of guy and a consensus builder, and I can tell by the conversations I've had thus far in the last couple of hours, there's an awful lot of interest in the economic development function here for the parish, and so working with all the people that I've met this evening and all of you going forward, I'm sure we're going to have a very exciting program, and I'm delighted for the confidence that Pat Brister has shown in me and that you have by your vote, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Don. Don will be starting on January 28th. He sold his house in Florida in 3 days. He came up at Christmas and bought another one here in Mandeville.
Wow.
So he's moving right along, but he'll be here the 28th.
Wonderful. Well, Don, we look forward to working with you, and all the best. We need some economic development in St. Tammany, right, Don? Yes, sir. There we go. Thank you.
Need more.
That's right. Okay. Next item, number 9, resolution CS number C-3622, resolution to approve the appointment of Beverly Garapi as Chief Financial Officer for the remainder of the 2012-2015 Parish President's term of office. Ms. Brister.
Yes, again, it's my honor to introduce Beverly Garapi. As you all know, we've mentioned it many times, Kim Salter will be retiring in October after many years. I don't know how many, but many. She knows this parish so well in our all of our ordinances she's been through over and over again. She knows our finances so well. When Kim decided to retire, we talked about when we hired someone, we would like for their emphasis to be more on financial. So that's what we have done to work with Leslie in the finance department. Beverly is from St. Tammany Parish, and so she doesn't have to buy another house. So she's here, and I would ask for your approval of her appointment. We're delighted to have her, and you've seen her resume also.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Groby, seconded by Mr. Falconer to appoint Ms. Garapi. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you, Councilman. And Beverly, would you like to say hello?
Good evening, all. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, and council, and Ms. President Brister. I am delighted to be back in St. Tammany Parish and to serve the people of St. Tammany. The opportunities are so great and tremendous. This parish is one of the most extraordinary in our area, and I see that from so many levels. And to have the opportunity to serve you and to work with Kim in the transition, I think the way that this administration has planned that transition is extraordinary, because a lot of places don't have that foresight to do that. So I'm looking forward to working with you, got big shoes to fill, but I'm really ready. I'm ready to work with all of you all as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Beverly. And Beverly will be starting Monday on the 8th, so she will be here, and you'll be seeing her around. So thank you very much. Thank you,
Excellent.
council members.
Thank you. Okay, item 12, Resolution CS number C-3625, resolution to approve and authorize the parish president to sign and/or execute a cooperative endeavor agreement by and between the parish of St. Tammany and the Archdiocese of New Orleans. This is infrastructure improvements for Judge Tanner Drive Extension, Holy Trinity Drive, and ANO projects. Mr. Gould.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Gould to approve.
Excuse
Seconded
me.
by, no. We're gonna go to the public. Seconded by Mr. Canulet. Okay, now we ask the public for any comments. Please state your name, ma'am.
Terry Stevens, 725 Dove Park Road, and also a member of Concerned Citizens of Covington. I brought some of my friends along with me who are in support of tabling this motion for the time being until a couple of items can be clarified. First and foremost, we noticed that a copy of the actual endeavor is here tonight, but it wasn't released previously, and we'd like a chance to review it because it should be clear and transparent and part of the public record, should it not? I would think, you would hope it would be. So we'd like that chance to review and perhaps contribute to it if possible, because all of the Dove Park residents, the entire corridor, all the neighborhoods that feed onto Dove Park will be affected by this agreement, by Most Holy Trinity Road, by the Archdiocese's development as a whole. So we'd like for it to be tabled on that basis, but also, and more importantly, I suppose, because in this document, there is reference to lots 2 and 3 that were zoned as MD1, which is medically related uses, and the development that's being proposed by the Archdiocese contains rental, multifamily rental, not only in a very large 160-person independent living building, but also in 29 cottages next to it that are not medically assisted. So per the zoning ordinance, MD1, those uses, multifamily, are not allowed. And I bring you examples of 2 zoning ordinances, MD1, where it shows that it's not allowed, but also an example of A6, which is multifamily, where there is a passage in it that says similar and compatible uses can be determined by the planning director. MD1 does not allow that provision very clearly in the zoning ordinance. So on that basis, we asked for this to be corrected because senior rental and a continuing care community is not an approved use for MD1, and that needs to be altered. They either need to go back and ask for multifamily, or you should table this issue until that's corrected. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate your opinion, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay. And by the way, while Mr. Shane is walking up, Sydney, let me ask you, this has been through zoning, was approved. Let me let Mr. Shane speak first, but I'm going to ask you, Sydney, for your opinion on the comments that the lady that just spoke made, okay? Mr. Shane.
Good evening, Mr. Bender and Honorable Counsel. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, and I represent the Archdiocese of New Orleans as it relates to this proposed cooperative endeavor agreement. My suggestion would be that this agreement is a result of many months of discussions, a lot of which were the result of public hearings where comments and suggestions were made as it relates to the development of the track and the infrastructure that would be needed. But more importantly, I think the safeguards that would be needed for the public if in fact the Archdiocese were given the opportunity to develop this track as we have previously zoned it. My suggestion this evening is that I do not believe the passage of the resolution makes it incumbent upon the parish president to sign the cooperative endeavor agreement, but only provides her the opportunity to sign the agreement, either in current form or as it may be revised after discussions that the council may have, perhaps the administration, and perhaps even in public forums. I'm not suggesting that that there be major alterations or that any alterations are needed. The only thing I would suggest, however, is that the Archdiocese has worked hard for many, many months, in fact, probably years, I think it would be fair to say, to get this project in a position where we would like to move forward with putting in the infrastructure that not only will benefit our project, but in my view, and I agree, understand that it's only an opinion, but much of this infrastructure, I think, will be of great aid to the general public, not just the Archdiocese project. And I'm talking about the construction of Holy Trinity Drive, the extension of Judge Tanner Drive, and the possibility of having other means of thoroughfare east-west between US Highway 190 and Highway 59. So my plea and suggestion to you would be to consider passing the resolution this evening so that this matter can be handled when the council and the administration feel it's time to sign the agreement.
Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Shane. Mr. Fontenot, in relation to the comments that were made by the first speaker, I know this has been through zoning, was approved. Can you give me your views?
The zoning commission and the council approved the zoning of the property to MD1. There are 4 listed uses in MD1. Whether a series of apartments or separate individual units would be classified as an assisted living facility would depend largely on the operations of that facility. So in making that determination at the time of building permit, we would ask for a business plan or something of that nature to determine whether or not it be applicable under those regulations.
Right.
It does, the fact that they are separate structures, each individual unit does not in itself make it not an assisted living facility.
I understand. Okay. So at some point, it would be reviewed depending upon the application for use.
Correct.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Kelly Kreminsky, Brookstone Drive. Because there's so much confusion with all of this, with MD1 and what's involved in MD1, I mean, we saw with the waste station in Lacombe how that was approved and then it got changed and all of that. Would it be fair to say that we could just wait on this one more month until everybody has an opportunity to see and discuss all of this and delve further into this to make sure that everybody can embrace all the components of this? Is that too much to ask?
Well, it's certainly procedurally something the council could do if it wished to do so. We have a motion and a second to adopt and approve. Mr. Fontenot's, I would just say to you, ma'am, Mr. Fontenot's answer to me is critical for my vote because what he's saying is that this is not the end. Once the actual type of project comes before the planning department, at that stage, it would be determined, does it comply or does it not comply? The fact is if it complies, it can't be turned down.
We don't know. So what you're saying is we don't know what the Archdiocese is proposing for that independent living facility?
Many times on a zoning issue, and Sydney, correct me if I'm wrong, many times on a zoning issue, we don't know what will be built there, okay, at that moment. We're simply voting on and discussing and voting on the appropriate zoning. Within that appropriate zoning, you might see 20 different things that could be put on there. A Dollar General store could be put on that property. I'm not talking about this property.
No, I understand.
A supermarket of certain square footage could be put on that property, okay? So we're voting on a classification that allows this group of things to be put on it.
But isn't MD1 already defined as what can go?
Mr. Chairman, I have to interrupt here. This isn't a zoning case.
No, I understand
All right,
this.
let me lay out what this agreement is about. It locks down the buffers that were committed to by the Archdiocese. It locks down the property that is being set aside for conservancy. It locks down the hours that construction can occur, including shutting things down on Sundays. It locks down all of the things that were proposed and agreed to over the last 5 public hearings that occurred over the last 2.5 years. This has absolutely nothing to do with the zoning. The zoning cases have been determined.
Right.
Now, the uses within will have to stand on their own merit when it comes forward. But the purpose of this document is to authorize the parish president to lock in the protections that were put in with greater buffers and many other things that aren't required by the ordinance that enables the land use to occur on those properties. Mr. Fontenot, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is what this document does.
I haven't seen the document.
Okay. Kelly? That's correct. We're not discussing,
No, I was trying to explain this to
I don't know
you.
why that's listed in there then. Why do you even bother listing it?
list what?
It shows in there what those lots are going to be, used for, and then previously, y'all
No.
approved MD1, and they don't fall into that.
That's not correct. What it does is lock down the buffers, the construction times, infrastructure that has to be put in place. I might add, infrastructure that's not required under the ordinances or the land uses that were approved. I'm not going to confuse this with a zoning case.
Okay,
no.
I'm
so
going
is
to
there
ask that you
someplace-
move on a vote.
Is there some place that lists what this means then? I mean,
Uh,
since,
Yes, ma'am. We have a list of list of items of every zoning classification. And Mr. Gould, I agree with you. I was simply trying to point out to her that it's a zoning issue, not a planning issue. And at the planning stage, that's the point at which what they've been talking
so
about.
this will come up at planning, and then we can address it then?
Yes.
No, that's not correct. That's not correct.
Okay.
They have to present their plan to the Department of Development. The Department of Development has to review it and approve the use. If the use is determined by them to be appropriate for the zoning classification, they can move forward. As I was saying before, this document locks down the extra protections that have been put in place during the course of 2.5 years of negotiating, fighting, and everything else you can think of. That's all this document does. Parish president, and all the resolution does is authorize the parish president the opportunity to review it and determine whether or not the parish president wishes to sign it.
Okay, and let me restate what my intent was. That it goes, at some point, the project will go to the Planning Development Department to be reviewed, okay? This is zoning. It's not planning and development. Now, am I correct, Sidney?
No.
Oh, this is not zoning. I thought he said it was.
Mr. Shane.
This is not zoning. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you said it was not zoning.
I
But you said it was zoning.
I said what I know to be true, okay? There are no buildings built on this property at this point.
Correct.
Okay, at some point, while zoning is approved, okay, any development is going to be coming before you all to be reviewed.
Correct.
Oh, that's all I said earlier. All I said earlier was the project or parts of the project will have to go before development to be reviewed to make sure they comply with the appropriate zoning.
Yes, sir.
It's just a matter of fact. I don't know why everybody got all worked up. Mr. Shane?
I agree, Mr. Bender.
Okay.
I would like to say, though, and maybe it will help the general public, again, it's only an opinion from my perspective, but the Archdiocese had a couple of steps that we had to go through to get into this position, and I think it's worth talking about. The first thing we did was that we used your ordinance and created a minor subdivision and created lots of record, and that was in conformity with your ordinance. And that's what in fact created these lots, so that there will be no further submission to the Planning Commission of a subdivision review. However, that does not mean that the project is immune from complying with all of the provisions of parish law.
That's correct.
As it relates to the construction of infrastructure, laying sewer and water lines, how big, where, what type of capacity, what type of roads, what type of base, what type of compaction, what type of warranty bonds, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So step one was to create the lots of record. That was a very public and transparent process. Step two was to create zoning so that the Archdiocese would know that the project, its intended land use, would in fact be permitted by the parish. We all know that we went through that discussion and battle, if you will, before the council. Once those elements were completed, the next step, quite frankly, was to make sure that most of the things that the parish needs and the protections that the general public need are confirmed in a written and binding agreement. Absent that, quite frankly, most of the things we've talked about has only been talk in public meetings. I don't mean to suggest that they weren't commitments to the extent that a lawyer can make a commitment on behalf of his client, but good business says that those things needed to be reduced to writing. So we do that in a contract format, and the parish does that through what we refer to as a cooperative endeavor agreement. We are now at that step, and with the eventual execution of a cooperative endeavor agreement, at that point, the Archdiocese of New Orleans will be able to go forward with the project. However, you can't put a shovel in the ground without having permits, whether it's work orders to do roads and infrastructure and right-of-way, whether it's building permits to build structures, whether it's permits to clear land. I mean, you have a variety of permits that need to be procured, all of which will require full legal compliance. And that's, again, what the Archdiocese hopes to do. And again, I would appreciate the council authorizing the parish president to execute the cooperative endeavor agreement when she believes that the necessary requirements of law have been met.
Thank you. Mr. Groby.
Question for Mr. Shane. Under 1.4, it says the covenants and agrees it will not seek any form of zoning from parish that would allow for the construction or operation of a school. In the long-term plans, do they expect to open a school there?
Absolutely not,
Then why would this be in the agreement?
because it was a request that was made early on by the residents of Westwood and other subdivisions in the area, and also by Councilman Gould, that there be a requirement. Furthermore,
That's correct.
all of the property has now been zoned in a manner that you couldn't build a school there without a zoning change. At the time that covenant was made, there was no, the zoning that's currently in place had not been effectuated, but no school.
Okay.
No. They can't even ask for a school until 2020.
Okay, and I think we've cleared up any misunderstanding that I may have inadvertently caused. Mr. Gould has asked for a vote, however, out of courtesy, please step up and state your name, and then we will be voting.
Bob McDaniel, 500 Dove Park. I know that the Catholic Church and the Archdiocese made a deal with Westwood, 100 feet buffer and all that, made it with the parish, 75 feet from Dove Park Road. But they forgot about me, and the guy next to me, and the guy behind me. That's to the east of the project. They didn't give us anything. 0 to 25 feet, I believe, is what you have in the law. Now, I have $1 million invested in my house, and this will really hurt my property values. You know, I think if maybe we could give it another month, and Mr. Shane could go back and talk to him about possibly just moving it another 50 feet or something, so that we have some sort of a no-cut buffer between our residences and this place, it would be much better. For us, anyway. They just kind of forgot about us on the eastern side of their property.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Gould has asked for a vote. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Item 13 is Resolution CS number C-3626, resolution limiting the parish council from referring rezoning cases to the zoning commission. Mr. Belisario.
Yes, this is something that's come up with over the last several months, talking to citizens, some of the council members. As far as I'm concerned, it's about time we do something along these lines, and one of the things I feel we need to have in it to make sure we do things the right way is I'm going to ask to have this tabled and brought up as a part of the agenda review meeting to look at and study exceptions to this. Because the way it's written, I believe, is it's automatic and there are no exceptions. I want to make sure we can be able to come up with a list of sound exceptions so that people would not have to go through a zoning change. And one of the areas that's a concern to me is that we have some land that's been zoned a certain way through the comprehensive zoning, then we find out that when the final plan is shown on the map, that zoning doesn't agree with what's in all the legal paperwork that went through the zoning and the comprehensive land use process. So you have a conflict there. I want to look at that, and then I know we're going to come into some cases where there's going to be a plain hardship, where someone's going to have to pay fees that they're not going to be able to easily afford. And so I think what we need to do is address these issues, and anything that will come up with some of the other council members.
Gene, I would agree with you. This is my proposal. Quite frankly, I think it's been overdue. I just wanted to get it out there so we could start talking about it.
Right.
So I would second your motion to table.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that they do a referral motion rather than a table.
Okay.
Refer to the Agenda Review Committee rather than table, because it doesn't leave it open for discussion if you table.
Okay.
Mr. Belisario.
I'll amend my proposal to refer this issue to the agenda review meeting at the end of January.
And I'll second.
Okay. Motion to refer, agenda review, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. And by the way, with Mr. Stefancic adding in the referral idea, I need to let the council know and the public know that I did ask Mr. Stefancic if he would stay on for 2013 as our parliamentarian, and he did graciously agree. He did warn me that he has a habit of correcting the chair, and I said, that's okay. Okay.
He prides himself.
He prides himself. It's much better said. So, Mr. Stefancic, thank you.
I never said any such thing.
Yeah, Richie heard you. You see that? Okay. Okay. The item 14 is Resolution CS number C-3627, resolution authorizing Parish Sales Tax District 3 to proceed with the issuance of sales tax refunding bonds. Mr. Ryan and Mr. Akers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're just here to answer any questions y'all might have about this.
Okay.
I can give you a brief summary if you'd like real quick.
Yes, and before we do that, Mr. Ryan, let me just, for the council and public's sake, and the administration, in this refinancing, I met with Parish President Brister, along with Mr. Ryan and our finance chairman, Mr. Belisario. Mr. Gould got called out to work at the last moment, so he could not be there. And we discussed and asked a lot of questions on this refinancing because it's an opportunity to save quite a bit of money. And then we made Mr. Ryan available for 2 separate meetings for council members, so that council members could meet with him and ask questions. And I believe 6 council members were able to attend, so that was excellent. So, Mr. Ryan, please proceed.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, this is basically an opportunity that exists today in current market rates to refinance your Series 2006 Sales Tax District Number 3 bonds and save the, and again, this is in today's market rates, but if we could do it today, it would save the parish about $1.5 million in debt service over between now and 2031, which in net present value benefit in today's dollars is about $1.2 million. And so what we're doing here tonight is adopting a resolution authorizing Jason and myself to move forward to the Bond Commission, make application to the Bond Commission, basically start preparing the paperwork. We'll have to come back to y'all again. And I think I met with probably the majority of the council members in those 2 meetings, but as we talked about there, it's a 2 or 3 month process. Our goal here is to get all the paperwork done, get the approvals in place, and then have time to watch the market and time to market and coordinate with President Brister and her staff at a time we think is appropriate to go into the market and refinance these bonds, if that ever happens. If the market moves away from us and it doesn't happen, then there is no transaction. The State Bond Commission has minimum savings thresholds that we have to meet. Those saving thresholds are promulgated by the GFOA, the Governmental Finance Officers Association. It's a national organization that says you have to meet these kinds of savings thresholds for different bond issues. And if we can't do that, if the market moves against us, there's no transaction, there's no fees, there's no cost to the parish.
And Mr. Ryan, if I could just ask a follow-up, just for everyone's information. At the meeting with Ms. Brister, I believe that we asked this question, and we were told that when, let's say that the market is such on a particular day where we have a golden opportunity to strike at some very low rates, President Brister will sign on behalf of parish government.
That's correct.
And all you have to do is, once we pass this, all you have to do is communicate with our parish president for approval.
That's correct, Mr. Benner. Not this resolution, but in the subsequent ordinance that we'll be back to after we go to the Bond Commission that you'll introduce and then adopt. It will usually it says an authorized officer of the parish, and the authorized officer is defined in the definitions as first and foremost the parish president. If she's unavailable, sick, not wishing you any ill, Ms. Brister, maybe the chairman of the council, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
But you have kind of a punch list of people that are authorized to sign.
Okay, very good. And we will be working with Foley Judell and Mr. Jason here.
Bond counsel, yes, sir.
And you see, this is what we were looking for. And it's working out well. We want to save money, we want to work together, and we want to keep the council members informed. So, do I have a motion, or does anybody have any questions?
Jerry, the one thing I just want to point out before I make the motion, what we're looking at tonight, if the ones who have had a chance to look at it online, we're documenting a procedure that we want to follow that's open and make sure that we can get the proper savings and save taxpayers money. This is the reason why we're doing it. And there was no document in place, so we met and worked this out, and this is the document that we've come up with. I think it's doable. So I can make a motion to pass the resolution.
Okay, motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Gould. Any discussion? Please vote.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Happy New Year to everybody. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, and for the meetings. Thank you, Mr. Akers, for attending. We appreciate it, and keep us informed.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, moving to appeals. The first appeal is item 1, Ronald Gu appealing the zoning commission denial on December 4th, 2012 to rezone 10 acres located north of Brewster Road, south of I-12, west of Louisiana Highway 21, from CB1 Community-Based Facilities District to HC3 Highway Commercial District, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Hand.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the public, I have been notified by the attorney for the property owner that litigation will be filed in this matter most probably within a day or, early next week, and I'll be provided a copy of it. And it will be in the form of a declaratory judgment, which will then be allotted to a district court judge who will hear this matter, and then that judge will render a decision in this matter, which will give this council further direction on the appropriate action to be taken regarding how this matter should be handled. So based upon that, at this time, my recommendation is that we table this matter.
All right, I move to table.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Gould to table, seconded by Ms. O'Brien.
Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me, Mr. Dean.
Yes, sir. If I could, I'd like to state I'm going to recuse myself. I am employed by one of the GOOS nursing homes, so I'd like to just state it for the record that I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay,
Abstain.
Mr. Dean noted that he is recusing himself on any vote. Anyone from the public?
Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me 1 second.
Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me 1 second. My mistake, Mr. Stefanski.
Thank
This
you.
is an appeal, and we have a motion because it's going to district court. Any discussion will be after we get guidance from the district court, okay? So. No. So I apologize, okay? Sir, it's going to district court, and once we get the judge's ruling and tells us how we can and have to act. I'm just trying to explain to the public. Then we will proceed. No, sir. Okay, please vote. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I hit the wrong button. Abstain.
I was just
Okay.
about to ask you, Mr. Dean. Motion passes with 11 yeas and 1 abstention for Mr. Dean.
We ask a generic question about this procedure without being about this particular subject.
Excuse me?
yes.
Okay. Come forward, sir, and please ask your generic question.
Okay, my name's Mike Shea. It's good to see another Shea in the building. Need all the Shays we could get right now. No. I simply wanted to understand when there's a filing of any sort for a declaratory judgment, regardless of whether it's about this issue or any issue, what notification do we get as the public? Because we are concerned about how we get information back, and I didn't hear that just now, so that's all.
It becomes a matter of public record. And I will let Mr. Wilkie, as I let Mr. Wilkie know previously about this meeting, that my recommendation was going to be to continue it. I will let Mr. Wilkie, or if you provide me with your name and address, I'll let you know that it has been filed, that it is a part of the public record, it is available at the courthouse.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
again,
Mr.
I'd
Dean.
like, maybe we could get a couple of the names, because I know that a lot of people were not getting the emails from Mr. Wilkie, so if we could get a couple of other emails. So that
Okay.
we know.
Would Ms. Dina Lopez, one of our assistant administrators, please, if you'd like to get the information after the judgment from the court, please give your information to Ms. Dina Lopez, and we will get in touch with you. Thank you. Okay, appeal number 2 is Michael Delaney appealing the zoning commission denial on December 4th, 2012 to rezone 1.057 acres located west of Thompson Road, south of Wesley Road from A2 Suburban District and NC2 Indoor Retail and Service District to HC2 Highway Commercial District, Ward 9, District 11. Mr. Stefanski.
Mr. Bender, I'd ask if there's anybody here that's going to be opposed to this. I'd seen somebody in the audience before that might be. but I
Okay.
wanted to see if they were going to be, and let them speak.
All right. Sir, come on forward
There's Chris Nogas.
and state your name.
My name's Chris Nogas. I'm
Okay.
here on behalf of the Bayou Liberty Association.
Okay.
And just speaking with Mr. Delaney beforehand and just now, I'm not sure whether we're opposed or not.
Okay.
We just learned about this issue last night. I can say that it would be nice to know a little bit more about the zoning commission's denial and why that took place. We have an existing building there that apparently the zoning was changed through the comprehensive zoning to something that is a little bit more restrictive. If this building were to be new construction now, I can tell you that the Bayou Liberty Association would oppose highway commercial zoning there and would be for neighborhood commercial. But it seems like maybe Mr. Delaney may not be opposing that if I'm not mistaken. So I guess it may be better to let Mr. Delaney speak first, and then if we have some opposition, I can come back up and state that
Yes, sir,
opposition.
we'll hear the appeal with both sides getting the same amount of minutes.
Okay,
Mr. Delaney.
thank you.
I'm going to try to cut this as short as I can. From what I understand, they were not opposed to the HC1 zoning. I'm willing to accept that. I was appealing for HC2 because it was a C2 commercial building, and I don't know if any of y'all watched the hearings last month when this came about. Basically, I wasn't aware that y'all rezoned my building or whoever did it. I know I was told several times that y'all spent a lot of money telling everybody, but like I told them, after running a business all day and going home with 3 kids and homework, I didn't know that they took your property and rezoned it. Stupid as it may, I didn't know that. Long story short, I went to get one of the tenants back in the building, and he couldn't move into it. And I couldn't use this building any other way, so I wanted to get it back to where we were, which was C2 commercial, but HC2 was closest to that. It's still a giant drop down to HC2. I'm willing to accept a HC1 just to move this on, because that's what they recommended at the last hearing. If that will make this process simpler, because I've already spent 4 months with something I've already owned and was changed without my consent, knowledge, or anything else. So I hope it makes it simpler.
Okay, so, sir, you're making an official request that it be downsized from HC2 to HC1.
No, it's not currently that. I believe y'all brought it down to, am I correct, A2 Suburban District and C2. I'm trying to make it HC1, which, yes, I wanted HC2. I feel that's what I deserve, but at the same time, I don't want to keep going through these processes. I'll be honest with you, I'm missing homework tonight, and that's a fact.
Yeah, the zoning commission brought it from A2 and NC2 to HC2.
No.
No, they denied
They
it.
denied it. I am appealing it.
They denied it.
And what I'm asking for is that they give me what they offered.
Which was HC1.
Correct.
And you're willing to do that?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, let's hear from the other side.
One of the things that I'd like to get clarification on is to note exactly what piece of property that we're talking about. Mr. Delaney explained that it's the property that includes his existing building, and we're not talking about an adjacent property where this zoning change would allow him to build another structure like he has currently, because we would certainly be opposed to that. So we wanted to clarify that it was only pertaining to the existing structure that Mr. Delaney has on Thompson Road.
Okay, and that's even with him willing to go down to HC1?
First of all, it is only on the piece of property, and Sydney can confirm that, but it is only on the piece of property that was
Changed.
rezoned before, and
Okay.
then was done before. It's where he built his building. So
Okay.
it's only the one
So
piece
that's
of
all
property.
we're considering?
Okay.
And Sydney, that is correct, right?
Yeah, I was just concerned because of the indication of an A2 property, but it appears to be just a strip around the edge of Mr. Delaney's property. So it would be the area essentially where the existing pavement is, plus landscape buffers.
Right.
Okay? The second issue is since I did not know, nor did anyone in our association know about the zoning commission meeting or this one until last night, is there any way you can tell me why the zoning commission denied the original request?
Mr. Fontenot?
The zoning commission was concerned about the HC2 because of some of the uses that are allowed in the HC2. This is clearly a retail facility, an office facility, but in the HC2, you had such things as liquor stores, potentially drive-in restaurants, convenience stores, although this not really likely on this piece of property, but they were uncomfortable with leaving the door open for those types of uses.
Right.
Because it is surrounded by residential use.
Aren't those such uses, though, also permitted under HC1?
No, the closest thing would be, the only time you'd have alcohol sales, it appears, would be if you have a restaurant that would have alcohol sales, if a restaurant would move into that facility.
Okay, so when I'm seeing here, all uses permitted in the HC1 district, okay. H2 would include things like liquor stores, what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
what you're looking at, the HC1, is so that we don't have to relist everything that's listed in HC1.
Got it, okay.
It just,
All right.
it includes those uses.
Okay.
Steve, how much time does he have left?
First of all, I didn't, because Chris came up, he's only talked about 1 minute. That was the one that I started whenever Chris, or whenever Mike Delaney started. But Sydney, when it comes to alcohol sales, and in particular, there was a question about a bar. This thing is within about 500 feet of the church, and the church properties, it can't go in there, right?
It would depend on exactly, we'd have to do the measurements, the exact measurements, because 500 feet is the parish restriction.
Right.
And we'd have to look at where the properties begin and end. If the parish would ever change their restrictions, remove their restrictions, state law is 300 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
So they're being right at the edge, there's always that possibility.
Our concern is not necessarily for the types of tenants that are in it now. Our concern is what might happen in the future should the zoning allow other uses that might not be conducive to the area.
Right. And I understand that Chris suggested the bar, I know when KD was here, the bar can't be part of it. She was bringing up a bar. It can't be part of it because the church owns the property right across the street, one block, one lot depth away from this property.
I would ask that since we were not aware of this, that this issue be tabled if you can until I have a chance to speak with our association about the details. We certainly sympathize with Mr. Delaney's position on it. We just want to make sure that there's nothing else that we're missing since we weren't present at the zoning commission meeting that we should be addressing. And that's our
Thank you,
position.
sir.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Delaney, you have more time.
I'm gonna make it short and sweet. I sympathize with y'all, but at the same time, it's been 4 months. It's my own property. I've already had it. This was rezoned without my knowledge, so I know y'all didn't get a chance to hear it either. I'm dropping it now to accept something that is not even on the planet of what I owned before. So I'm doing it if it's quickly. If it's not, well, then we'll go the other way. But thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. If not, we're going to court, but Happy New Year. Okay, Mr. Stefanski.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I want to ask Sydney. Sydney, we've had a lot of meetings on this. Will the HC1 cover what we had planned, what they're currently doing on the site?
Not knowing the exact businesses, I believe it does.
Okay?
I believe it does.
And I'm going to say it this way because even though Mike's been involved with this for 4 months, his dad and I have been involved with it longer than that. And this is one that I brought up to the council where the comprehensive zoning had changed it. Had they not changed it, it would still be HC2 or something equivalent to that today. I've had 6 meetings where I have on a monthly basis. This has been brought up and discussed at several of those meetings. It's been discussed, I've had meetings with Sydney, I've had several meetings with Sydney over this. And if Mike is willing to go to HC1, I'm willing to overturn the zoning commission tonight and allow it to go to HC1 from the trying to look at A3, I believe, well, A2 to NC2 to HC1. If he's willing to go to that tonight, I'm willing to put a motion on the floor to override the zoning denial and allow HC1 rather than HC2.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Stefancic to override the zoning commission's denial with the understanding that the HC2 be HC1, and we have a second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, Mr. Stefancic, you want to introduce an
Yeah,
ordinance?
before I introduce the ordinance, or the resolution, the ordinance, I'm sorry, introduction ordinance, I just want to tell Chris and them are very much aware that I hold my meetings every month, and I advertise in the paper what's going to be discussed at those meetings, and they know that they can come at any time to discuss any of those items, so, and I would encourage them to attend those in the future. Thank you. I am moved to introduce the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Stefancic for an introduction of an ordinance, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Thank you.
Can I respond to Mrs. Stefancic's comment just now?
No, sir. You could talk to him after the meeting if you like. Ordinances for adoption. Item 1, ordinance count number 4914AA, ordinance establishing a no parking zone on a portion of Dove Park Road, Ward 4, District 5. Mr. Gould?
First of all, I need to put a motion up to amend the distance that this thing's going to cover.
Okay.
I want to remove 1050 Dove Park Road and insert Little Creek Lane. That's my amendment, and the reason for that amendment is that we're just trying to make sure that when construction occurs on an archdiocese property, that we don't have people trying to pull in there and park and mess up Dove Park Road and create an obstruction. It's just very, very precautionary. So my
Okay.
motion's to amend, as I spoke, and I need someone to second.
Okay, we have a motion on that amendment, seconded by Mr. Artigue. Please vote on Mr. Gould's amendment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I apologize. I didn't see you standing there.
I'm a big lady.
Did you want to comment on his amendment?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, please hold a vote. Okay.
Kelly Kraminski, Brookstone Drive. Mr. Gould, at the last meeting, was visiting with one of our board of directors for Brookstone subdivision, and they have been going back and forth with emails, trying to better understand what's going on with the Dove Park, no sign parking and stuff. And if possible, we would like this just to be tabled one more month. I know it's a pain. I promise you won't hear from me anymore tonight, I promise.
Yeah.
But just so that Mr. Gould and Ms. Bodwin can kind of get all their ducks in a row and make sure that everybody on Dove Park knows this is exactly what we're that y'all are proposing, and that the residents down there know exactly what this means. And they're specifically talking about construction traffic and all of that down Dove Park Road. So I would
Mr.
just
Gould.
respectfully.
Well,
ask.
let's pass the amendment, and then I don't have a problem tabling it for a month, because this isn't something
It's
that
not
has to
dire right
happen
this minute.
absolutely, tomorrow.
Okay, we'll vote on the amendment, and then what he's saying is he'll table a vote on the ordinance as amended, okay? So you still have the votes recorded?
All
Okay.
right, vote on it.
Please vote on the amendment.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Mr. Gould?
All right, let's move to table. excuse me, postpone until the next meeting.
Motion to postpone the as amended ordinance for 1 month, seconded by Mr. Artigue. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Item 2 is ordinance calendar number 4915AA, ordinance to amend the St. Tammany Parish Code of Ordinances, Section 2-009.00, parish fees and service charges, B, Development 4, mandatory impact fees. Mr. Belisario.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
No,
Excuse me.
I have a comment.
I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
In reviewing the ordinance, and I looked at, and I know we've talked to Sydney about where they're going to spend the money and how they're going to spend the money from the different sides of the stuff. The service area is defined as the unincorporated area of St. Tammany Parish located south of the urban growth boundary line. Okay? And then when I read where the expenditures can be, it says expenditures shall be made, and I'm looking at C and D, under item 4 on page 19. You see where that is? Under fee expenditures. Expenditures shall be made from the rural road impact fee only for non-site related improvements to the major road areas outside of the service area, but in such a manner to address the road impacts of the development from which the funds were collected. It would seem to me that that should say it's in unincorporated areas outside of the service area, because there are incorporated areas outside of the service area. I wouldn't think we would be
I would defer-
spending our monies in municipalities.
Yeah, I would defer to legal counsel whether we need to make that change or not.
Yeah, that's fine.
I understand
mean,
it.
It further clarifies it. It's just a clarification of it. I mean, we obviously can't spend money in those incorporated areas. On this, it has to be spent in unincorporated, but if you
Well,
want to make
but
that
it doesn't
amendment,
say
that's
that.
fine.
That's why I was.
Right, it's a clarification.
Okay, and should we make an amendment to that or not? I mean, because that's a trivial amendment, but it's clear. Then I would move that under fee expenditures, items C and D, have the language of following the word, in C, following the word major road systems, put the words in unincorporated areas. And the same wording would follow in item D, under drainage capital improvements. Following that would be in unincorporated areas outside the service area. I would move for that amendment. I mean, that's really protecting our rural areas a little more than, and it should be. I mean, that's where the issue has come up, so.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 19.
Oh, okay.
I'm moving to amend it.
So, we still have that motion and that
Yes.
second.
You leave it on there.
Moves to amend as he's just stated.
Right.
And Mr. Tanner seconds, okay? So before we vote on that, we'll hear from the public.
We're on the amendment, so
It's fine.
if that's what you're wanting to talk about, no.
I don't know what they're wanting to talk
Well, no,
about.
but they
That's why I
should-
want to hear them before we vote.
Since the motion to amend is on the floor now, they should be talking about the motion to amend. Because then you got to go back and vote on the whole thing.
Okay. Do either one of y'all want to talk about the motion to amend? Does anybody want to talk about the motion to amend? No. Okay. Please vote. Steve, you were right.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
I'm not going to say anything, okay?
Okay. Okay. Ms. Sandra.
Thank you, Chairman Bender. Sandra Slifer with the League of Women Voters. That I just have a couple of questions on it that, one of the things I'm glad to see that drainage and, is mentioned in here an awful lot, and in terms of water quality, that I'm curious if we can get a copy of the green of the study that is talked about in terms of determining how these fees were determined? You know, because there is reference to a study that was done in, August? I would like, yeah, that I think that, if that's not already on the website, you know, if I think that we need to get a copy of that study, just to determine the cost of it. That one of the things that I'm concerned about is that, you know, at the Smart Growth Summit that I just attended in November of this year, that the person who is the president of the American Planning Association is the planning director and the economic development director of Raleigh, North Carolina, and that, you know, he talked 2 or 3 times about the real costs of development and recognizing what those costs are, you know, especially in a typical suburban development pattern, and how many times those costs just aren't recognized. So I am concerned about the fact that the cost for almost everything is going down significantly in terms of those impact fees. And so I'm just curious about the procedure or the process that was used to determine what those costs really are, and that we really are capturing those costs. Yeah, because, you know, it just seems like this is a problem for many, many governments across the country. It's a complicated ordinance, that I will say that, and that unfortunately there wasn't an agenda review meeting, in December, with the holidays, to take the time to ask more questions about it. So, I just, would like to have an opportunity to spend more time looking at the ordinance and asking questions about it, just because I think that there are an awful lot of complexities, here in the ordinance. It looks like there's some good things that are here, but again, those are some of the questions that I do have is, are we really capturing the costs? So, thank you.
Carlo Hernandez. Thank you. I had much of the same comments that she just had, and I would also like to get a copy of this study. You know, however many years ago it was, on the original ordinance, I commented on that and supported the ordinance. I had the benefit of several months of review of that, and also had benefit of getting access to the study, the original study. So I think many of my questions would be answered by getting a copy of this ordinance, and I would hope that you do consider tabling this or postponing it, for 1 month, to allow us the opportunity to get that. One thing, and I just want to clarify this, even though I certainly have read this thing extensively, but under definitions, under commercial, it says means retail, office, or institutional uses as defined, and yet it doesn't say anything about industrial. Was that an error? I know later on there is the term industrial used on there, and then there are fees associated with that, but yet under the commercial designation, that is not in there. So I thought, is there a reason for that you eliminated or deleted or not included under the commercial designation, the industrial also? I think what you need to do, I believe, is to include that also in the definition of commercial, the industrial also. And I would hope that you might consider, because I have many other technical questions, I'm hoping that looking at the study would answer that. But some of the other changes that were made, it was interesting because those of us who were involved originally with this thing liked much of the language that was in there, and yet some of that language is now being deleted, and I'm just curious as to why it's being deleted. I think I know some of the answers based on some of the conversations I've heard, but I would like to be told, yes, that is the reason why we eliminated that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Tanner.
Well, I just, for those who are saying they want to, they want to study and they need to study the ordinance and what have you. This ordinance was put on the agenda in November. It's been tabled twice already. I think everybody's had time to get a copy of it. If they had questions, they could have asked questions the first 2 times. The first 2 months it's been on the agenda. You know, we got people waiting to, we're talking about economic development and raising fees and what have you. We got people waiting to build homes and what have you in the no-growth area until these impact fees are done away with. So, I mean, you know, y'all say we're gonna lose money. I say we're gonna make money because we're gonna have more jobs and what have you. People are gonna be building more homes, especially in the non-growth area.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Carol Fox of Pearl River. I had spoken to Mr. Groby last month about why the office areas were charged more impact fees than industrial. And I think he told me because the industrial have their taxes waived or something, and so in order to get more money, then the offices would be charged more impact fees, and I didn't understand why. So if
I
y'all
think
could
maybe we'll ask Mr. Fontenot. Yeah.
I don't know how to answer what she understands Mr. Groby indicated. I do know you do have different traffic generation characteristics between industrial and office.
Right.
You also, for every square foot of industrial, you generally have less impervious surface that you do offices because they generally use aggregate paving material in their large parking lots, large lots.
And Sidney, just maybe for the lady and for other people, we didn't just pull these numbers out of thin air. I mean, there's organizations that do studies on this that provided, right,
Yes,
that
the same-
provided
it's
to
the same company that
municipalities and
did-
counties and parishes.
They did the first study. What we did is we gathered the information, the cost of construction of road construction, the cost of construction of retention ponds, our mileage. They checked virtually every angle, what's their discounts for this gasoline tax in the
Right.
formula. And they run the formula. We sent the information to them. We did not know what was going to happen with the fees. Generally, the consultant indicated that due to the economy, the trip generation is down on virtually every type of use, and construction of cost is down. We saw that in our own projects. A mile of roadway doesn't cost what it cost in 2004,
Right.
2005. So those are the reasons for the reduction, but I'd be happy to share the studies and the details of the studies with anybody who contacts me at the office.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gould.
Yeah, having been the person who sponsored this ordinance originally back in 2000, and I think it was 4 when we did it, what we looked at was the impacts that were being generated by the types of uses. And what you have with an industrial uses, the impacts aren't as great. Maybe a nasty use, being industrial, but an office, for example, is going to generate an awful lot more people driving back and forth and visits. So that picks up your trip generation. From a drainage standpoint, the office is probably going to have much more impervious space, concrete, that sort of thing, which is going to be more runoff. For example, commercial property increases the volume of runoff by 300%. Industrial is not nearly as bad as that unless it has a lot of concrete around it. So if that makes sense to you, ma'am.
Sort of. Who was the company that did the study?
Duncan Associates, Austin, Texas.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, if there's no one else, we voted on the amendment. I need a motion on the
Sorry,
ordinance
on the
as
floor.
amended. Excuse me.
You just need to vote.
Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Yeah. Okay, item 3 is, excuse me one second. I wanted to point out that we have Councilman David Ellis with us in the audience tonight. He is a city councilman from the city of Mandeville. David, would you stand up, please? Sure, no problem. And we appreciate you attending. Anything you want to tell us?
Actually, do I have a minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, half the council hates me now. And, you know, so
I
I
haven't-
mean,
I haven't
really,
met everybody
David.
here,
I
so
told y'all.
I'm glad to.
Hey, I told y'all were gonna miss me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, go ahead, David.
Well, I'm one of the four new guys, as you probably know, on the council, and I think we're making some good progress in different areas. One, latest is the Financial Oversight Committee, which is a standing committee, so we're doing some looks at our processes in Mandeville. Other, probably seen with some of these ladies, with the Bow Ordinance and a few other little miscellaneous things. We've got a pretty packed agenda coming up. I just printed out, you know, this, not nearly as packed as yours, so I'll let you get back to your business, but this starts, we're back on Tuesday, or excuse me, every other Thursday, starting next week. So if there's anything in particular that anybody's interested in, please give me a call or let me know.
Great.
So, and I'm in
Thank you.
District 1, for those that don't know, the west side of Mandeville.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean.
I wanted to point out, too, that we had the mayor of the great city of Covington in there earlier.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. Just
Well,
wanted,
I apologize. We had quite a crowd. Okay, item 3 is ordinance calendar number 4916, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 15.55 acres to a PUD, Ward 3, District 5. Mr. Gould.
I'd like to move to postpone until next month.
We have a motion by Mr. Gould to postpone until next month. Seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Item 4 is ordinance calendar number 4917, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 15.55 acres from NC4, NC1, and A7 to A4A, Ward 3, District 5. Mr. Gould.
Move to postpone, please.
For 1 month?
Yes, sir.
Motion by Mr. Gould.
Next month.
To postpone to next month, seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 5 is ordinance calendar number 4918, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.5 acres from A1 to A1 in MHO Ward 2, District 3. I need a motion for District 3. So moved by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 6 is ordinance calendar number 4919, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 5 acres from A1 to A1 in MHO2, Ward 2, District 3. Need a motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 7 is ordinance calendar number 4920, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.4 acres from A2 to PF1, Ward 3, District 5. Mr. Gould. Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Number 8 is ordinance calendar number 4921, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.40 acres from A1 and PF2 to SWM1, Ward 7, District 7. Mr. Groby.
Before I move, I'd like to ask Mr. Shane a quick question. Do we have a tentative start date for construction?
No, sir. We'll have to put in the infrastructure, the road first, but it will be, I think, happening soon, hopefully in the first quarter. You'll see beginning of construction.
Okay, motion by Mr. Groby, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 9 is ordinance calendar number 4922, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 20.66 acres from A1 and I2 to HC3, Ward 7, District 7. Mr. Groby.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Groby, seconded by Mr. Bellisario. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 10 is ordinance count number 4923, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.4 acres from A3 to PF1 Ward 4, District 5. Mr. Gould. Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 11 is ordinance count number 4924, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify .424 acres from PUD to PF1, Ward 1, District 3. Need a motion for Mr. Thompson. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 12 is ordinance count number 4925, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify .99 acres from A1 to A1 and MHO, Ward 1, District 3. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 13, ordinance count number 4926, ordinance to extend for an additional 6 months the moratorium on Louisiana Highway 21 Plan Corridor, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 14, ordinance count number 4928, ordinance accepting finalized subdivisions into the road and drainage inventory, specifically entering the right-of-way of Abita Avenue within Abita Terrace subdivision, Ward 3, District 5. Mr. Gould.
Move to postpone. I don't have a clue where this is at.
You want to postpone for 1 month?
Postpone until next month, so I can
Okay,
get up to
motion to
speed on it.
postpone until next month by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 15 is ordinance count number 4929, ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory to include Riverbend Drive, C. Gotti Road lateral, and Highway 437 lateral, Wards 1, 2, and 3, Districts 2 and 3. Mr. Sharp. Motion by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 16 is ordinance count number 4930, ordinance to amend the Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, Article 2, watercraft speed limits to establish a dead slow, no-wake zone on the Highway 11 Canal, a portion of the Morgan River, and a portion of the Boogerfly River, Wards 3, 8, 9, Districts 5, 9, and 13. Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 17 is ordinance count number 4931, ordinance to amend the 2012 operating budget, amendment number 10. Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Canulette, seconded by Mr. Groby. Any questions? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 18, ordinance count number 4932, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 8.901 acres located on the southeast corner of LA Highway 1077 and LA Highway 1085 from HC2 Highway Commercial to HC2A Highway Commercial District, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean. Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Number 19 is ordinance count number 4933, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.66 acres located east of 8th Street and west of 9th Street, south of Louisiana Highway 36, from A4A Suburban District to HC2 Highway Commercial District, Ward 3, District 2. Mr. Sharp. Motion by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Mr. Belisario, Ms. O'Brien. Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Nominations. Under number 1, appointment of one individual to the Board of Commissioners of St. Tammany Recreation District Number 16. This is by Mr. Smith. Do we know, Mr.
Make a motion
Henderson?
to table.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did. Bellicero.
Motion by Mr. Bellisario to table, seconded by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item number 2 is appoint 2 individuals to the Board of Commissioners of St. Tammany Recreation District Number 10.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make,
Yes, sir.
okay, 2 appointments.
All right.
Mr. Trey Blackall and Mr. Pacey McWilliams. Please.
And what was the second name, sir?
Pacey, P-A-Y-S-E-E, McWilliams.
Okay, any other nominations? Motion by Mr. Canulet to close the nomination, second. All right. Yeah, because this is not parish-wide, we can take the vote tonight on these 2 members. Please vote.
Please vote again. The votes were clearing. Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Under appointments, item 1 is resolution to reappoint David Root, term expired to St. Tammany Parish Fire Protection District Number 8. Mr. Tanner? Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Groby. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 2 is resolution to appoint Matt Dennis to replace Harvey Hayden, moved out of district to St. Tammany Parish Fire Protection District Number 9. Mr. Tanner? Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Item 3 is resolution to appoint George Cascino to St. Tammany Parish Gravity Drainage District Number 5. I need a motion from someone. Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Under discussion and other matters, 1 is a motion to refer to the Zoning Commission for recommendation the proposed rezoning of .924 acres bearing physical address 38184 DG Holly Road, Pearl River, from HC2 Highway Commercial District to A4 Single Family Residential Ward 8, District 11. Mr. Stefanczyk. Motion by Mr. Stefanczyk, seconded by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Okay, we need to take a slight curve. I need a motion to open up the items off the floor agenda. Motion by Mr. Bellisario, seconded by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Okay, I'm going to read item 1, and this will be for inclusion in executive session, which you will notice we have 5 items in executive session already. So, item 1 is executive session, oil spill by the All Rig Deepwater Horizon, case number 2:10-CV09999 CJB-SS USDC Eastern District. Mr. Gould. Okay. I'm sorry? Mr. Falconer moves on it. Mr. Dean? Please vote. All, no, I've got to take this off the floor and move it over to executive session. No, no. Yeah, I'm voting to go into executive session. You're correct. With this vote, that includes it in executive session. That's correct. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Okay, we're back to executive session, and Please vote.
No action is needed on number 2 on that side. That's the one we do mediation on, and we'll be coming back to you also.
Okay.
Mr. Groby? Mr. Gould?
Vote on each one. Yes. To resolve the matter in accordance with the recommendation.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Except for number 2. Okay, coming out of executive session, item 1, Savelma Alexander versus St. Tammany Parish, 22nd Judicial District Court. I need a motion to accept the recommendation of legal counsel.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Canulette, seconded by Mr. Groby. Please vote.
Way to go, dude.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
Okay, item 2, Sarah Jambone versus St. Tammany Parish, 22nd Judicial District Court. This requires no action by the council at present. Item 3, Brittany Johnson versus St. Tammany Parish, 22nd Judicial District Court. I need a motion and a second to take legal counsel's advice. Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 4 absent.
You vote on it, authorizing the parish president to make presentment.
Okay.
That's what the terminology is.
Item 4 is Wallace Ruiz versus St. Tammany Parish, 22nd Judicial District Court. I need a motion and a second to authorize legal counsel based on his recommendation. Motion by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Number 5, George and Christy Bloom, Henry and Melanie Billiot, Mike and Laura Massey, and Ross and Lynette Davis versus JPE Incorporated, the Parish of St. Tammany, and Allied Insurance Group, 22nd Judicial District Court. Need a motion and a second to authorize legal counsel based on his advice. Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
And the item, I'll call it 6, but it's the item from off the floor, executive session, all spill by the All Rig Deepwater Horizon, case number 2:10-CV-0999- et cetera, in U.S. District Court, Eastern District. And need a motion. What's the?
Authorizing the parish president to make presentment.
Motion by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Motion to adjourn.